Pepe Escobar joins us live from Hong Kong. Mr. Escobar, thanks very much for being with us here this morning. Now, we know that almost 2/3 of UN member states are to take part. The organization's head, of course, will be there. So what does that actually mean? Is this a failure for Western diplomacy, in your opinion, and its attempts to isolate Iran?
Look, just look at the map. It's very simple. Who is in Tehran at the moment? I would say it's the real international community. Who's over there? Central America, the whole of Central America, including Cuba. Most of South America. Virtually the whole of Africa. The Middle East, Iraq and Afghanistan, India and Pakistan. Southeast Asia, the whole of Southeast Asia. And we have as observers Mexico, Brazil and Argentina from Mercosur in South America, and China. What does that tell you? That this is the real international community trying to find solutions to pressing problems such as the Iranian nuclear dossier and the war in Syria. And the coverage, I have to talk about journalism here as a journalist. The coverage in American mainstream media ranges from the pathetic to the absurd. They only talk about Iran trying to boost its credentials and show that it's not isolated. It was never isolated in the first place. This is a figment of the imagination of the Obama administration and European poodles, the allies, and the GCC petromonarchies in the Middle East. So this is a real, very important meeting, harking back to those great NAM meetings when Joseph Tito of Yugoslavia was still alive.
Interesting question here, Mr. Escobar. Forgive me for interrupting you. As you said, it's a very important meeting, and a lot of countries from the region will be there participating. But how effective can they really be, and the decisions that they are going to take there, especially given the fact that none of the major powers responsible for the measures is taking part in the conference? So how much do you expect from this particular meeting?
Well, I expect something very important I wouldn't say a Syria breakthrough, but very importantly, before the meeting, the Saudis, the Turks and the Qataris, they wanted a condemnation of the Syrian government. Egypt, which, by the way, President Morsi is the first Egyptian leader to visit Tehran in 32 years. He's there himself, in person, not an emissary. This in itself is a major geopolitical breakthrough. It proves that Sunni Egypt and Shiite Iran now are talking at the highest levels. So, coming back to the preparation of the summit, the Saudis, the Turks, and the Qataris wanted a confrontational approach. Egypt proposed, no, we have a contact group with us, Egypt, plus Saudis, Qataris, and Iranians, and we're going to talk about a possible solution for Syria. This is what it's all. This is how diplomacy works at the highest levels. You have to find a solution involving the main partners in the region, and a solution that will save face for everybody.
Well, absolutely. Speaking of solutions, Tehran says it has a comprehensive peace plan for the conflict in Syria, which will be presented during the summit. So how effective will that be, and will the international community welcome this effort, in your opinion?
Well, the international community, the real one, which is present in Tehran, they may. The problem is the people who think that they are the international community. This means Washington, London, and Paris, and Riyadh as well, which, by the way, is represented by the Saudi deputy foreign minister in Tehran. The problem is the local partners, they can arrive at a solution. The problem is the main people who are interfering, which are basically the GCC petromonarchies, even if they are in Washington, they don't want a rational solution. They want regime change. And so, this goes way beyond NAM. You can have 25 summits all over the world, and you never find a solution for this contradiction. How you going to spread democracy in the Middle East when you are calling for humanitarian bombing or regime change based on a bunch of guerrillas in a sovereign nation?
All right. Well, Mr. Escobar, finally, before we let you go, here's a question about Tehran's nuclear program. So, in your opinion, how will the summit affect the talks on it?
Well, not much. Let's be rational here. This is being discussed by the P5+1. The 5 permanent members of the Security Council plus Germany. And the problem is, every time there is a breakthrough, this is cut off in the bud by Washington. They don't want a breakthrough. They don't want a negotiated solution. Washington's policy is to keep rolling over the thing maybe to next year. And depending what we have next year, if we have an Obama too, maybe Obama, because he doesn't have to run again for a third time, he will go for a Nixonian moment, go to Tehran or go to somewhere else and try to broker a deal. If we have Mitt Romney as president, we all know what's going to happen. He's going to support the Bibi-Barak duo for a war against Iran. So this is beyond NAM's reach. But we can have a strong message from NAM, 2/3 of the UN, basically saying, look, try to find a diplomatic solution for the Iranian nuclear dossier.
Absolutely.
And this is already a country.
All right, Mr. Escobar, thanks very much indeed for sharing your views with us. And I was Asia Times correspondent Pep Escobar.
Egypt's president is attending a summit in Iran this morning, the first visit by an Egyptian leader to Iran in more than 3 decades. It quickly turned tense when the Egyptian president publicly criticized Syria's government. Margaret Brennan is following the events from Iran's capital, Tehran.
Today was supposed to be Iran's coming out party, the biggest gathering of international leaders since the Islamic Revolution that brought the Ayatollahs to power. Iran put its agenda center stage, but not all of the guests stuck to that script. Egypt's new president, Mohamed Morsi, shocked the conference and his Iranian hosts by criticizing Syria, Iran's chief ally in the region. He said, "Our solidarity with the struggle of the Syrian people against an oppressive regime that has lost its legitimacy is an ethical duty." At that point, the Syrian delegation walked out. Morsi went on. He called for the Syrian opposition to unify, in effect advocating for the overthrow of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Iran is Assad's chief patron. But the main event was the man who really runs this country, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. He stuck to script, defending Iran's nuclear development program, saying nuclear energy for all, nuclear arms for none. For CBS This Morning, Margaret Brennan, Tehran.
Hello there, welcome to Al Jazeera. I'm Shuli Ghosh. These are some of the top stories. Syria's delegation at the meeting of the non-aligned movement in Iran has walked out after Egypt's president called the Assad government oppressive. Iran's hosting the 120-nation summit and is a key backer of the Syrian government. Imran Khan has more from Tehran.
Iran has long maintained that all sides in the Syrian conflict must sit down without precondition. However, the West has said that Iran doesn't have a role to play within ending the Syrian conflict. Now, it's likely that Iran will try and win the backing of the non-aligned movement to try and further its own interests and influence in Syria.
The UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting on Thursday to discuss the deteriorating situation in Syria. Earlier, Syrian rebels said they'd shot down a government fighter jet in Idlib province.
With me I have Sheikh Ikrimah Sabri. Sheikh, thank you very much for joining us here on RT. Israel allows Muslims to make pilgrimage to Mecca, but on the other hand, it forbids men under the age of 40 from entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan to pray on Fridays. How do you explain this contradiction?
This contradiction is due to the fact that they let our brothers who live in the areas occupied in 1948 carry out the Hajj, since it's their legal right. There are also some political benefits to be gained from demonstrating that there is freedom of religious acts. As for the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the rules are the strictest there, since it's on their territory. If it was situated somewhere else, no such measures would be taken. Now their focus is on Al-Aqsa. The occupation authorities aren't criticised only for that, though. Most of their actions deserve criticism.
You have said that Jewish authorities are trying to desensitize Muslim sensitivities to Al-Aqsa. Why do you say this?
Israeli occupants are trying to make it seem like the Al-Aqsa Mosque is not really that important. They say that Muslims have the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, so they don't need Jerusalem or Al-Aqsa. They also want to weaken the link between Muslims and Palestine, since Al-Aqsa connects 1.5 billion Muslims with Jerusalem and Palestine. This link is made of belief and faith. They think that if they weaken that link, Muslims are going to lose interest in Al-Aqsa. In reality, though, the Muslims that don't live in Palestine feel closer to Al-Aqsa because they know it's in danger, as are their beliefs. And so whatever the occupants do to diminish Al-Aqsa's significance is bound to fail.
You have also said that if the Israeli government and fanatical Jewish groups sense a weak Muslim reaction, they see this as a green light to move forward. So what, in fact, should Muslims do?
Sadly, Muslim countries are now more concerned with their domestic issues, neglecting the issue of Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem and allowing Israeli occupants to carry out their hostile plans. And they have quite a few of those, including the Jewishization of Jerusalem and taking control over Al-Aqsa. They are making the most of the numerous domestic problems that the Arab and Muslim countries are busy addressing right now, so they can carry out their plans without any resistance.
Why do you believe that you are the Muslim world's first line of defense against Israeli and Jewish ambitions in Jerusalem?
The thing is, Jerusalem is isolated from other Palestinian territories. Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza Strip are not allowed to enter the city. The only people who can get into it are Palestinians that live in the areas occupied in 1948. They can do that because they live there. So it's only the people who live in Jerusalem and the areas that I mentioned who can come to Al-Aqsa. These are the people who protect it, who coordinate action to preserve it. If these people stop going to Al-Aqsa, there will be no one left to protect it. We are grateful to them for what they do.
What do you think about Israeli claims that the wall and checkpoints are there for security reasons?
Israel's claims that the wall was built for security reasons have nothing to do with reality. This is not true, because they do not observe the 1967 borders. They have occupied a lot of Palestinian territory, in addition to those that were seized in 1948. Secondly, making all people feel like prisoners is not the way to solve security issues. The way to do that is to ensure security of all people, as well as grant them full human rights. That would be a fair approach. A wall is not a solution.
Over the years, have the Israelis changed their treatment of Palestinians wanting to come and pray at Al-Aqsa Mosque?
The occupation regime treats Palestinians in a way which is far from humane. They are cruel, oppressive, they don't have mercy. There's one issue that's not reported in the media. I'm talking about Palestinian women who don't always get a chance to give birth in hospital. The occupants stop ambulances at checkpoints, and sometimes because of these delays, ambulances cannot get to the women in labour on time. As a result, they cannot give birth at a medical facility. Sometimes the baby dies, and even the mother herself can bleed to death. We have registered over 300 cases of such inhumane behaviour on the part of Israeli authorities. I have met with a number of delegations of American scholars and asked them if they have ever heard of this. They all said no. The Western and Zionist media do not report these cases. My opinion is that these checkpoints are set up to inflict more suffering, to kill unborn babies whose mothers have to give birth on the way to hospital.
How far has the Israeli digging under Al-Aqsa Mosque gone, and how much of a problem is it to the structure of the building?
Excavation works are extensive. They are digging in two directions, from Silwan going south and to the west of the mosque. And because of this digging, houses and Muslim artefacts get damaged. Actually, they haven't discovered any Jewish artefacts during the excavation. One Jewish archaeologist admitted that they had not found a single stone related to Jewish history. There's no doubt that this dig will cause destruction of the mosque. There are already cracks in its southern and eastern walls. They remove soil from under the mosque, uncovering the foundation. It's like the building is hanging in the air. Geologists say that an earthquake with a magnitude of 5.0 will collapse the structure. Before they dug out these tunnels, the mosque withstood even the worst earthquakes. The dig is very dangerous. We have protested against it several times, but the authorities have ignored us.
Several Israeli extremists have gone as far as to call for the Al-Aqsa Mosque to be torn down and for the first and second Jewish temples to be built in its place. What do you have to say about this?
Jewish extremist groups have a lot of power in Israel. They came to power along with the Likud party. The current government, headed by Benjamin Netanyahu, is working with these extremist groups. And so now they are revealing their secret agenda, including the plan to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Some of them say that there should be separate visiting days for Jews and Muslims. Others claim that the mosque should be under Israeli control because it's part of Israel. They say that it's located within the old city limits. These aggressive statements reveal their true intentions regarding the mosque. Why are they not talking about the control over the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? They are only interested in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We think it's really dangerous. People don't think that such claims are backed by the state, but in reality, the state support the extremists who make these statements.
You have complained about what you say is the totally inadequate manner in which Muslim states have reacted to Israeli efforts to take over Al-Aqsa Mosque. What should Muslim states do?
We believe the Al-Aqsa Mosque is not only a sacred place for Palestinians, but for all Muslims. It means that all Muslims must share a responsibility for its preservation. It has strategic importance in that it serves Muslim communities across the world, in Russia, the US or Europe. All Muslims must do what they can to help our cause. You can use different leverage, diplomatic, political or economic. Every country must know the truth and be aware of its responsibility. We do what we can here on the ground, but our resources are limited. We cannot oppose all of Israel's plans alone.
In what way and why are Israeli authorities harassing you and other spiritual leaders?
Israel wants to carry out its plans gradually, step by step, without much fuss or objection. But we keep bringing it up. And by doing so, we have exposed the plans of the occupation authorities. That's why they use media and press conferences to pile the pressure on us, to gag us, to crush those who stand in the way of the occupiers. It only proves that there is no freedom or democracy in Israel. They have democracy for the Jewish people. It does not apply to us.
Do you see the Palestinian issue being resolved in the future?
There are still no signs that this issue will be resolved in the near future, particularly with the Netanyahu cabinet in power. They want to start negotiations from scratch. Israel does all it can to obstruct and stall the process to prolong the existence of its state. These talks didn't make any difference for Palestinians. These talks are a waste of time. We can talk about talks for decades. That's why I don't think they make any sense.
What do you think about the way that the Palestinian Authority is handling the issue of gaining independence?
The Palestinian authorities are weak. They are looking for a solution. They want to prove they have achieved something, but the talks have actually been a failure. So at the moment we don't have any solution on the horizon. It means we need to unite to revive our economy and science, to be invincible when D-Day, the moment for a solution, comes.
Is it fair to say that Israel is trying to obliterate the Arab Islamic identity of Jerusalem?
Israel's policy on the ethnic issue is based on the Jewishization, confiscation of lands and construction of settlements. They are working to increase the size of the Jewish population and cut the number of Arabs. They do it by putting pressure on Arab merchants and Arabs in general to push them out of Jerusalem into the suburbs or other towns. By referring to a crisis in the housing sector, Israel stopped giving permits for construction. And so when a young man grows up and decides to set up a family, he will not be able to find or build a home. Even if he finds one, the rent will be too high to afford and he will be forced to leave. So even without declaring its intentions, Israel is ridding Jerusalem of Arabs. Israel doesn't talk publicly about this. But according to my observations, the population of Jerusalem is growing. In 1967, there were 70,000 Arabs. Today, there are more than 300,000. In one of his prophecies, Muhammad was asked about where his followers should go after he leaves. And he said that Muslims should stay in Bayt al-Muqaddas. That's in Jerusalem, where they lived at the time. In this way, he blessed all generations to come to live in this city.
Sheikh Ikrimah Sabri, thank you very much for joining us here on RT.
But how many eyes are closed to the wonder of this night, like pearls hidden deep beneath a dark stream of desires, but like dreams vanish with the call to prayer, and the dawn extinguishes night. Here too are signs. God is the light everlasting. God is the light everlasting. God is the light everlasting. God is the light everlasting.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. So, you like what you've learned about Islam. You've come to realize that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and that He must be worshipped alone with no partners. You understand that Allah would not leave us in the dark without showing us how He wants us to live. And so throughout history, He has chosen people to be prophets and messengers, those who receive from Allah the message of Islam in order to teach it to humanity. Now, inshallah, you are ready to become a Muslim. So how does that work exactly? Actually, it's very simple. There's no baptism, no odd ritual acts or fancy ceremonies. To become a Muslim, all you have to do is declare your faith in Islam. That's it. Easy, right? This declaration of faith is called the Shahada, and it is the first pillar of Islam. All the beliefs of Islam are encapsulated in these two statements that make up the Shahada. I'll say it first in English and then in Arabic. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is his slave and his messenger. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Now don't worry, I'll repeat that again at the end of the video, inshallah. But first, I just want to explain what the Shahada means. When you say La ilaha illallah, you're saying, literally, that there is no God except Allah. But the word for a God in Arabic is ilah, which means something that is deserving of worship. So ultimately what you're saying is there is no thing worthy of worship except for the one who is worthy of worship. Allah, God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. When you say Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, you achieve two things. First, you clarify that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the slave of Allah, the worshipper of Allah. Why is this important? Well, in the past, some of Allah's prophets were wrongly deified, worshipped alongside of or in place of Allah. I'm sure you could think of at least one well-known example of this happening. So, this statement reinforces that worship is only for Allah. Second, by testifying that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, you're also accepting the message that he was given, the Quran, as well as the things he taught and the example he set for us. You accept the articles of faith, the things that every Muslim believes, which are belief in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and predestination. You also accept the 5 pillars of Islam, the actions of a Muslim, which are the Shahada, which we've been discussing, Salah, the daily prayers, Zakah, annual charity, Sawm, fasting during the month of Ramadan, and Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim must make once in their life if possible. So, now that you fully understand what it means to be Muslim, you're ready to take your Shahada. Even though it's not an absolute requirement, generally it's best to have at least 2 witnesses for your Shahada, since this is meant to be a public declaration of your faith. Now, I know that some people might not have close Muslim friends or know how to get in touch with a local mosque. While I can help you with those 2 things, I have another idea that I think will be really cool, inshallah. Since we're here on YouTube, I want to invite you to record your Shahada and upload it here as a response video. This way, you'll definitely have more than 2 witnesses, and inshallah, you'll get a nice warm welcome from the YouTube Muslim community. This invitation goes out to anyone watching this video. Even if you're already Muslim, I encourage you to make a response video and recite the Shahada. There is a blessing for you every time you repeat those words, and inshallah, having everyone participate may give our non-Muslim brothers and sisters the courage to take the Shahada as well. So, whether you're Muslim, non-Muslim, new Muslim, semi-Muslim, let's all take the Shahada right now. And then, inshallah, if you're able to, record a video of yourself reciting the Shahada and upload it here as a response video to make it public. Okay, ready? Repeat after me. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is his slave and his messenger. Okay, now in Arabic. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. MashaAllah, if you just took your Shahada, you are now an official Muslim. All of your past sins, not only are they forgiven, but they are converted into good deeds. You are as free of sin as a newborn child. Because you're in such a pure state right now, this is the best time to make a lot of dua, personal prayer. You can ask Allah to help you along this new path, to continue to guide you and to guide your family. Also, if you could, please pray for me and for my family. SubhanAllah, Allah has seriously blessed you by guiding you to this way of life that He created for you. Now you can slowly start learning how to practice Islam, beginning with how to pray. I know it can seem like a lot to learn, but trust me, if you're sincere and you ask Allah for help, He'll make it easy for you. And you don't need to do everything at once and be a perfect Muslim who knows everything overnight. Inshallah, take it at a pace you're comfortable with. Also, if you just became a Muslim but you didn't upload a video, please let me know anyway. You can contact me through a message, inshallah, and I'd be happy to help in any way that I can. If you watched this video and you didn't take your Shahada with us, I urge you to seriously look into Islam and to consider coming back to this video in the near future, inshallah, to put aside your obstacles and enter Islam. After all, there's a reason that you're here today watching this. The invitation is always open. Thanks for watching, and to all my new brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اليوم يئس الذين كفروا من دينكم فلا تخشوهم واخشون اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا.
This video was brought to you in part by Your Muslim Neighbor. For a free translation of the Quran in English or Spanish, go to yourmuslimneighbor.com today. This video was also brought to you in part by Dawah Shirts, a comfortable way to share Islam. You're ready to take your Shahada.
Every community has some secrets. The Muslims have them too. And these secrets are not like passwords or personal information that can compromise personal security, but they're answers to questions that are mostly not discussed in public. In this episode of Muslim Secret, we're going to ask a simple question. Do Muslims want Sharia law in America?
Allahu Akbar.
Every Muslim I met had a different interpretation of Sharia law, but they had one thing in common: don't believe what the opponents say.
Sharia law, I think, is a very misunderstood concept.
Don't just go by random websites, what they post and what they tell you about Islam.
The word Sharia law is totally misunderstood.
Hello, Dawood. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good.
Please have a seat.
So to understand what Sharia law really means, I went to Dawood Walid. He's a famous Muslim leader in Detroit.
Tell me first, what is Sharia law?
Well, Sharia and law would not necessarily be the best two phrases to conjoin or combine together, but Sharia simply means a path towards faithfulness of how a Muslim seeks to live a life holistically pleasing God. This ranges from our ritual worship to regulates how we are involved in ethical transaction of businesses.
But the real trouble for many people in this country is the kind of laws practiced in countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Afghanistan under the Taliban rule.
Generalizing that, oh, if there is Sharia law, people will be whipped, hands will be chopped off and stuff like that. That's not, in my opinion, Islamic laws.
Waleed says no American imam has advocated for harsh criminal punishments practiced in some Islamic countries.
Certain punishments that are applied in Saudi Arabia and Iran, American Muslims in a unified way, or from our Islamic scholars, have never advocated for those punishments here in these United States of America. Where this comes from is a highly funded, well-organized Islamophobia network that has projected these ideas since 9/11, and unfortunately there have been some politicians that have taken off running with the idea that American Muslims are trying to impose a harsh type of judicial system or punishments that are applied in very few countries in the Muslim world. In particular, people think of Saudi Arabia and Iran. That is absolutely not the case.
So what is the real case? Imam Ahmad Saleh, a prayer leader and a professor at the University of Detroit Mercy, says it's the personal law that some Muslims have been advocating for.
They don't understand that the Sharia law can never trump the government law that is out there, But Muslims want, if I divide my inheritance, I want to divide it the way the Quran wants. If I are going to go to a nikah, I want to be married by Muslim rights and go through a separation by Muslim rights. Jewish people want that, Muslims want it, Hindus want it, and Catholics want that. There's canon law for Catholics.
And there are some people who believe that American Constitution is enough to achieve the objectives of Islamic laws.
There is more accountability and everything in this country than even countries where Sharia laws are practiced.
Even if Sharia, if the way we follow, we want it will be no different from what our Constitution speaks of, for protection of faith or wealth or mind. I mean, these are the basis of any faith. We have one country under God.
And for those strict punishments, Waleed says he's even against the death penalty in America.
But you personally believe that there is no place for those harsh punishment that we see around the world in America?
I think it's harsh punishment to electrocute people or to kill people in the gas chamber based on circumstantial evidence. Those are laws that are binding in many states in the United States of America that I'm categorically against.
Then where does this impression come from? And there is an impression that when the Muslims talk about laws that are related and that are embodied in the Quran, that people want those harsh laws in the U.S. Why do people think that?
Well, these ideas have never resonated or came from our American Muslim scholars, from the American Muslim community. These are things that have been manufactured and projected by the Islamophobic industry in the United States of America and have been carried out by certain rhetoric and certain discourse by politicians with their own political objectives. But these Islamophobes find, if they can name 5 prominent Islamic leaders in the United States of America that have advocated for the legalization of polygamy or for chopping off hands of habitual thieves, and I will retract my statement, but I'm very confident in my statement because our Islamic scholars here in America, our prominent imams, have never advocated for these things and changing the Constitution of the state of Michigan or the United States Constitution.